Okay, so this part of the process is no different than what we did with the other blade. 425 on bake in just a regular toaster oven you can buy at a flea market or whatever the case may be. And just set your blade on the rack, close the oven and leave it in there about 2 hours. Okay, so now that we have our blade in the tempering process, we've heat treated it, now we're tempering it to pull some of the hardness back out of it so it's not brittle. We've got our handle drawn out on a piece of oak stock here that was reclaimed from the knife shop. And I'm going to cut that handle out on a bandsaw really quick, or on a scroll saw, and then we're going to shape our handle and then bore a hole in it. And the difference is, yesterday we went ahead and put the handle on our knife ahead of time, glued everything up, epoxied it, then we shaped our handle. But we had a straight blade to hold on to do that shaping work on the belt. With this particular tool, because you have a hooked blade, it's not that simple, and we're not going all the way through the tang, so we only need to drill in about a couple inches or 1.5 inches deep on here to put our tang in there and epoxy it in. So we'll go ahead and cut the handle off first and shape that and bore it while we're waiting on our blade to finish tempering. Stay with me. Okay, so that feels pretty good in my hand if I were going to use a reverse grip with it. So now we're going to go ahead and bore a hole in it, and then we'll start to shape it on the sander. Okay, so I bored a 7/32 hole in this thing, center line, and now we're going to use a fairly heavy belt to knock some of the excess off of here and start to get it rounded out. Then we'll get on with a shaping belt to do the rest. I think that'll work for the initial sanding on this thing, and now we'll put some hand paper to it to get it nice and smooth. Okay, so there's our handle prepped and ready. Now we just got to wait for our blade to come out of heat treat and temper, and we will be ready to assemble this thing, let it dry, and then do our final sharpening and testing of the tool. Okay, once our time is up at heat treat here, we can kind of pull this dude out. And now we can see if we've got this hole big enough or not that we made for our tang. Try to kind of slide it down in there and see what we got. It's pretty close. Might need to take a little bit off the tang, but not much. Easy enough to do on the grinder once this cools down. Then we're going to epoxy this dude in place and get ready to do our final grind on the blade. Okay, so before we glue things up, we want to look at our fit up. Make sure we're down to that wire edge, because the only thing we're going to do after this is buff it. So now we're ready to glue it in place, and we'll have our Makatagan ready to finish up. All right, so squeeze equal parts of epoxy and get those mixed up. And just like before, I'm going to take this and Coat the tang with it really, really well. We've got a lot smaller hole we're dealing with this time, so we're not going to get as crazy about trying to pour it down the hole. We're just going to shove it in there just like that and make sure that we're good and straight. If we need to turn it at all, we'll do that now. I think we're in pretty good shape there as far as alignment goes. Okay, so here's our tool. I'm going to put my mark on it here, DC. And I put one coat of oil on the handle already. I've got the blade taped up from where I was working with the handle. And now I'm going to untape the blade because we really need to look at the final sharpening of this blade now and testing it to see how it's going to work. And it's meant to be held in this fashion, but it can also be held in this fashion like a normal hook knife. So we'll discuss that and do some demos with that once we get it sharpened up. So we've got a really, really fine belt on this grinder. And like I said, we're going to kind of freehand this a little bit because we want a little bit of a convex grind here. So we're going to come back from the bottom here, and the sharp edge is up on the top. So I'm kind of starting my grind from the bottom and then working up to that. Kind of like this. And remember that we want our blade to be able to lift itself up out of the material. So I'm just kind of gently rocking it to give it a little bit of convexity. So it's not a full-on Scandi grind. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to strop this thing. And just got a couple pieces of scrap leather here I'm going to put in these vice jaws just to kind of protect this handle from getting messed up. I'd probably be better off cutting that apart, but as long as I get something in there so this handle doesn't get smashed in those knife jaws, I'll be in pretty good shape. There we go. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to go toward the blade edge, and our cutting edge is here, okay? So we're kind of rolling toward that blade edge with this strop, and that's going to roll the burr to the inside, and we'll take that off last because that's going to get us to our razor edge. And we're just following that bevel around with the strop. Just like this. 20, 30, 40 strokes is not going to hurt anything. And once we get that done, we're just going to come in from the top and knock that burr edge off from the top, just like this. Just rotating it with the tool. We've got a rounded edge here, so we can get right up in there to that curve, just like this. Get exactly what we want. If you don't see where we're at here. Oh yeah. Things getting sharp for sure.